Hey, what's up, folks? It's your boy Alternative Facts back at it again. I couldn't find my sunglasses, so I'm keeping them off. But we got our second special guest, who I will not name for my personal interest reasons, but I will say that he is supposedly the top Halo 2 vehicle player in the world at the time, and he is very well known to the prior special guest. So if any of you guys care to look into my channel, I know you don't because you're mostly randos. This is going to be an interesting one. So, I think we're going to start off with something a bit unique for these assets, and we're going to be starting off with a relatively interesting specimen that exemplifies capitalism and its finest fruits, especially since it's free. My special guest, have you ever heard of Helltaker?
I've not heard of Helltaker, no.
Well, I think you're about to get a good treatment of what it is. So here's some backstory. Helltaker is the art project of one Polish artist slash game developer that's been in production for about 3 years. Last summer, it was released on Steam, made free available to the public, to anyone who wanted a copy, right?
Hmm.
So it's a simple puzzle game with some dialogue options. It's not exactly a real complicated affair given it's free, but I'd like to see what your responses are to some of these prompts.
Okay.
It's pretty. Also, I want to note that I always seem to get more views with anime-based content, so this is kind of in my self-interest too.
Sure.
So we start off
I don't
with,
know, I don't know shit about anime,
yeah,
but I'll try.
that's kind of the reason why I'm doing this. I think a trial by fire is very good considering the increased influence it has on contemporary pop culture. Besides that, I know you want to look out for your family, so it's good for you to know the threat so you can be prepared for it.
Yeah, not gonna let my daughters do that.
Yeah, it's very good. I'm trying to. Alright, so we're going to start again with. Okay, so we got introductory dialogue. We got this massive fly creature, intimidating looking. So just for. Just clean slate stakes, we're going to start with a new game. Okay, so yeah, it's unvoiced because cheaper that way, I think. Lower download file size and whatnot. Okay, so we start with this really muscular looking dude. As you can see from the text, he's got some interesting goals. So,
Oh,
yeah,
I can't see the text. Where should I be looking for the text?
it's, oh, it might not have come up yet on the stream. There's a delay. Okay, so I'll just narrate this. Well, actually, maybe I shouldn't narrate this. My voice kind of sucks. Okay, so, we got the guy dressing up. His objective is to basically get a harem of demon girls after a dream. So, that should give you some indication as to what things are. Don't worry, it should stay relatively... It's YouTube appropriate, obviously, but... It's something I want to give you exposure to because I think it's both very unique in its artistic value and its pop influence, right? This got huge during the pandemic for obvious reasons. People are stuck inside on their computers, and people of my peer group and social group were, well, not social groups explicitly, but, college-age dudes who are aware of this stuff, they kind of like it. So do you see the puzzle on the screen right now?
Yeah, I pulled up the stream. I see the puzzle.
Yeah, this game has a reputation for being insanely hard. Now, let me see if I can remember how to do it properly. Alright, so your objective here is to get her into your demon girl harem, Mr. Guest. What is the dialogue option I should go with?
Maybe I can serve you instead.
It was a successful. Okay, well, I can obviously tell this is going to be kind of weird for you, so... Would you like to give me some of your opinions on the Cleveland Browns?
Well, yeah. Well, as a former bouncer, I know what the good pickup lines are and aren't because I've watched them. It's your own little life game. Cleveland Browns. I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, and I've been, since I was born. That's where I grew up. It's a civic religion there, and it's I don't know. It's very disappointing civic religion. Imagine like the most depressing religion you could imagine, and then choosing to pay for it. That's what being a Cleveland Browns fan is like.
But it
It'd
does...
be like, unlike Prosperity Gospel or Joel Osteen or one of these other guys, it's just like, hey, do you want to pay to have your heart broken every year? Awesome. Well, do we have the thing for you?
So here's my next. Okay, regarding the Cleveland Browns, wouldn't the loss more or less have become an institution of itself, and wouldn't that kind of make up for it, or is it still just as raw every time?
You get to a point where you just get to laugh about it, and you know, most people who are Browns fans are also Indians fans and Cavs fans, so they're used to disappointment. Um, but my wife, who's from St. Louis, she's a Cardinals fan, and the Cardinals are the most successful NL franchise in history. She is used to winning World Series, right? Like, the only championships for Cleveland in my lifetime have been LeBron James in 2016, and then our indoor soccer team, the Cleveland Crunch, which won 3 indoor soccer titles in the 90s. That's it. And so she didn't understand this, that like we were watching a Browns game. It was a Thursday night football game, and the Browns had a good shot at winning, and they blew it. And I just started laughing maniacally when they did it, because like you knew it was coming. Like that's you just get used to it, and so when it happens, you just laugh. The Browns are better now. I mean, they're the best they've been, in my adult lifetime. And it was great to beat the Steelers in the playoffs last year. But, you just kind of get to this point with Cleveland sports fandom where, the bad thing happens and all you can do is just laugh. Otherwise you won't live very long.
Very fair. As a student at Georgia Tech, I can kind of relate to that experience with our own football team under the leadership of Coach Jeff Collins. Hopefully his strategy starts working. I'm not sure if it will, but the future will untold. So you mentioned LeBron James. Do you have any personal thoughts on him you'd like to bring up?
So I'm actually a year older than LeBron James, and I remember I sat 3 rows behind LeBron James at the Ohio State championship basketball game in 2002. Now you're wondering, why was LeBron James sitting in the audience of the Division I Ohio High School Athletic Association state championship game? And the answer is his school, St. Vincent St. Mary's, was so small that they were a Division III school. Now, they of course would have probably kicked the ass of my alma mater had the two of them played. But, it was not based on skill, it was based on enrollment, and that's the way high school athletics typically works. I was very skeptical of LeBron, thinking like, a guy younger than me is just going to forego college and go straight to the pros. Is he really that good? Yes, he was. He did a lot for Cleveland. And then in 2010 or 2011, whenever it was, when he, had the ill-fated decision, I knew, again, being a Cleveland fan, that, like, you don't have a big special and be like, I'm staying in Cleveland. Like, you knew he was leaving. It was a matter of where, right? I thought that was a dumb mistake that a young person would make. He got bad advice. And like everyone else in Cleveland, I hated him until he came back. He brought Cleveland their only championship. And I think most Cleveland people think all is forgiven. Maybe not among right-wingers who don't like the fact that he's politically active and he said some dumb stuff about like how horrible China is, and just being like, oh well, about Hong Kong, if you remember that controversy. But I think from a matter of betrayal, I mean, look, Cleveland doesn't own LeBron James any more than St. Louis owned Albert Pujols. These guys are free guys who can go wherever the hell they want. That's America. But since he was from there, Clevelanders took a little bit more personally when he left. But I think the majority of Clevelanders they may not cheer for him anymore, but they will always hold him in a place of respect, given his talent and what he's done for the city and the region.
And what about you? What are your thoughts on him leaving for Miami, aside from the emotional impact?
Oh, Cleveland suffers from usually its ownership issues, where the owners of the 3 teams aren't willing to invest in the rest of the talent. You might remember Dan Gilbert, the guy who owns Rocket Mortgage, who's the owner of the Cavs, posted this like bizarre press release in Comic Sans right after he left, I think one of the weird ironies in this is Dan Gilbert was the one of the three owners at the time who was willing to invest to bring the talent to try and win a championship, where the Dolans and the Indians basically weren't willing to do that until, the mid 2015, 2016, and then later Jimmy Haslam. I mean, that's its own story. But I am wearing my Cleveland Browns shirt right now. But I didn't mind the fact that he left as much as I did the manner in which he did it. And so, and then when he announced in Sports Illustrated he was coming back, I was still a little bit critical, because nowhere in that article that he had either written himself or had ghostwritten was the word sorry ever used. And I think he should have been sorry. Not for leaving. Again, you can go where the heck you want. I'm a firm believer in that. But he never said he was sorry for the manner in which he did it, which, was sort of a black eye on the psyche of that region.
That's a very insightful perspective. Thank you for that. I got another question about Cleveland. This one's slightly more personal. You go game for it?
Sure.
All right, so what happened...
Unless you're asking about ex-girlfriends, but...
It's a bit more material. What happened to the old Agora site, and what do you think of the new Agora location?
Talking about the music venue?
Yes.
I don't know what happened to it. I mean, I went to a couple concerts at the Agora. Let me research this here. I'm trying to remember. See which one was the last one. Yeah, Acoustic Hookah was, I think, the last concert I saw at the Agora in the early 2000s. I haven't lived in Cleveland. I'm almost 40 now. I haven't lived in Cleveland since 2002. So I didn't even realize it moved. But if I recall, it's in an area called the Flats, which local comedian Mike Polk calls the Scooby-Doo Ghost Town.
Yep.
It's down by the Cuyahoga River, and it's sort of like a bar and entertainment district. There are strip clubs and all this other kind of stuff. But it was, it's an area that's had a lot of ups and downs. But it's basically industrial warehouses. I mean, the Agora and other places. I saw a Pink Floyd tribute band there, I think, once at the Agora with my college roommate and high school buddy. But I couldn't comment on where it is or what it's like now, because until you informed me of this, I didn't even realize it had moved.
I don't know. I gotta be honest, I'm just relating the stuff my dad told me. He's a Clevelander and a real proud one at that, despite the fact he hasn't lived there probably since before even you were, so. Alright, I'd like to just ask a bit of another more simple question. This one's just something interesting. Would you rather just watch me get trashed in Battlefield? I understand this is a bit of an odd gaming introduction for you, so I'm more than willing to switch to something a bit more conventional.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to watch you get trashed about Battlefield, because those are the games I play. I only play first-person shooter games. I used to play more games before I had kids, and listeners, forgive me if you can hear my children stomping around as my wife tries to put them to bed. But so Battlefield 3, is that the World War I one?
No, that's Battlefield 1, actually.
Interesting.
So actually, do you want me to? This might get a bit winded on my end, but are you fine if I kind of give my own explanation of the Battlefield franchise to you?
Sure. I mean, I played Battlefield 2 and one of the other ones, but there was a long hiatus involving children until the coronavirus pandemic, where I played absolutely no video games other than SimCity at work late at night.
Well, alright, so I guess as you can see right now, Battlefield 3 doesn't have all that many players, but it's being miraculously kept alive by the Germans. So, I guess there's the two eras of the Battlefield franchise defined by the game engines in use. You're probably very much familiar with the refractory area. Battlefield 1942, Vietnam, Battlefield 2, 2142, what else? I'm missing a few of them, but I guess you get the point. The sort of the hardcore OG style. Then, with the introduction of the Bad Company series on the original on not the original, on Xbox 360, and then Battlefield 3, you get Frostbite Era, which emphasizes Battlefield's new, well, it reestablishes Battlefield as the flagship technology-based franchise in FPS gaming, with destruction as a series hallmark, larger player counts, though some of the competitors kind of beat him out on that, and all that fun stuff. I'd like to return to Battlefield 3 here, not only because it's my favorite of the series so far, but it's also the only one this computer can really run while I stream, so we got importance there.
Hey, it works for me. I played Bad Company in Battlefield 2, and then I stopped. But I also played Halo and Call of Duty, and I was always a Battlefield fan over Call of Duty. It's just that when I got my PlayStation 4 in February of 2020, I didn't want to play a World War I game.
Oh, yes. Battlefield 1 is a really interesting inflection point for the franchise in the Frostbite era, because it came at a really bad point in time for Call of Duty, so it attracted a lot of people interested in a sort of boots on the ground experience, historical shooter experience. And it's probably the most profitable Battlefield game in its franchise history, and it's also the only time it ever outsold the Call of Duty. But I personally think that there were significant issues with Battlefield 1 in terms of what it introduced, not only in gameplay mechanics, but also the people. So, Battlefield 3 and 4 kind of established a precedent of player choice and sort of sandbox games where you can pretty much do whatever you want within the class restrictions and remake the Battlefield to whatever you want. Battlefield 1, constrained by the sort of historical experience and background, and limited customization and such, really curtailed the experiences. What DICE provided is a very fine, very well-developed experience, but a much narrower one that dissuaded many of the older players in the franchise. Furthermore, the massive influx of players created an interesting scenario. Are you kind of aware of all the controversy with Battlefield 5?
No. You mean the one that's coming out here in the near future?
No, Battlefield 5 is a mainline entry that came out in 2018. What we've got coming up is 2042. Battlefield 5 was revealed with a pretty awful trailer, but it also had women and minorities, which obviously set all the gamers, the hard R gamers, into a real bad light. Kind of rough for me to see as a minority, but my personal theory, my personal bigoted theory is that it's all the Call of Duty players coming over causing that trouble, but regardless, Battlefield 5 marked a low point in the franchise because while the gameplay was relatively evolved, I'd say it's freer than what Battlefield 1 offered. The issue of lack of polished, poor post-launch support, and obviously social controversy means it never really could get to the same heights it had as I expect Battlefield 2042 will. So, some history on that.
Can I ask you a question about, I followed Gamergate when it was a thing. One of the things I don't understand, having gotten back into gaming and playing Warzone mostly, is, I guess I understand why people want to wear their politics on their sleeve. But, during Black Lives Matter and during, other issues of social unrest, man, you got owned very quickly.
I've not done that. I thought I had enough time to pop off a grenade at the dude in front of the tank, but I misjudged that badly.
Oh, I was asking you a question, so...
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear. I had to disconnect something.
Oh, no. Well, I assumed you were listening and you were distracted.
No, that was my mistake.
You saw how politics sort of was responded to by Activision and others. I don't understand why people, when they're playing these sort of strange video games, that they want to infect it with politics. I work in politics. I've worked in politics my entire life. And, I just didn't understand why, whole cadres of people would have Trump as their clan tag, to play a game like this. It could just be that they were right-wing nut jobs and, they were mostly interested in trolling or pissing people off. But one of the things I like about Call of Duty is, I forget the technical term, it's like a kill audio, you know what I'm talking about? Like, if you kill someone, you get to hear their audio, they get to hear yours.
Yeah, I've actually never heard of that, but please continue.
Okay, yeah, so in Warzone, when you play the game, when you kill someone, you literally for a brief, like 1 or 2 second period, get to hear what your opponent is saying as you killed them, and they get to hear what you're saying. And this is one of the things I actually really like about Battlefield and why I think it's superior to Call of Duty. Before you just died, you shot a grenade at a statue, and the statue broke.
Yeah.
Call of Duty is designed in such a stupid way where like someone could call in a cluster strike and you could be in like a tin shack and it's like you're you live, and it's like, no, that's literally not the way physics work.
Yeah.
You could ride a motorcycle into a Jersey barrier, and it, what's it called? Oh God, I'm forgetting the name of the game right now. In Grand Theft Auto, if you do that, you will get thrown off the bike and you will die. But so one of the things I like doing is saying Biden won whenever I kill someone from the Trump hashtag thing, because the election was over months ago, and if you're still clinging to this, it's a fun way to kind of piss them off.
Yeah.
So this Battlefield, I think I definitely remember this map.
Same Crossing.
Has this map been used on multiple Battlefields?
I don't think so. I think this is only just Battlefield 3, but it's very popular
Okay.
within the community among those who've played it.
Okay, I guess I played Battlefield 3 as well. I mean, I still have all of my old CDs and my Xbox 360, but, I haven't fired that up. Oh, the PKP Pichang.
Oh, yeah.
Brings back memory.
Battlefield 3 is more or less my awakening to the potential of first-person shooters. I can't really describe it what it was like for 13-year-old me playing this at my brother's place.
Man, you got hosed there. 0 kills.
When I started playing, I would go like 232, but typically I do better now. My KD in like Battlefield 4 is like 0.93. I got a decent SPM and all that. Battlefield 1 I have like 1.41. Battlefield 5 is about the same, but with 5 it's less because I use the broken balance of the tanks to pad it.
Do you remember, I think it was Bad Company, that Middle Eastern map with the aircraft carrier?
Gulf of Oman?
Yes.
Yeah, so that got remade.
Sorry. I used to parachute into that building you couldn't climb up, and I would be the biggest spawn camping sniper ever. I was such a dick, but it was so much fun.
I remember I played a lot of hours on Gulf of Oman and Battlefield 4 with the sort of remastered DLC, and they got an elevator up there now, but most of the people up there camping don't pay attention, so it's pretty easy to get knifed if you're doing that.
Oh, that makes sense. That wasn't there when I played, but I really like trying to get super long distance kills. Like 400 or 500 meters if I could.
Yeah. So actually, there's one point I want to revisit, discussing the politicization of video games, because I think that's a great topic for for us to discuss on this channel. Obviously, I like your methodology of pissing off these sort of Trump supporters. I wish I could do the same in that capacity, but Battlefield is a bit more impersonal of player interactions. One thing I've always I feel like the entire discourse about political themes in games is just fundamentally broken. I think from either the journalistic end or the player end, a lot of people are too quick to seek out the themes that correspond with their political views or fit a convenient narrative, and just more or less drowns out some of the actual interesting themes of these games. One example, I guess probably not a bit related, but I'd like to bring up an example of The Division 2, which is a game I've dumped hundreds of hours in since the winter playing with my friends. Have you heard of that franchise, The Division?
No.
Okay, so the premise is you're a government sleeper agent activated by a national security directive in the wake of a pandemic in America that kills a lot of people. Society's on the verge of collapse. So your job as an agent of the Strategic Homeland Division is to maintain continuity of government and try to, basically keep the population safe. So you can.
Yeah.
So the first game just took place in New York, and I remember reading articles. People were kind of criticizing it as a sort of pro-capitalist thing because one of the missions involves lighting up Times Square, and you got to fight criminals. Rikers. People escape from Rikers State Penitentiary. Second game is the second game takes place in Washington, D.C., where you kind of have to deal with the situation there, and it unfolds a lot more of the conspiracy behind what's happened to the American government since the virus began. And again, typical journalistic points would complain that it's sort of pro-capitalist, light, sort of, I don't know, neocon game. Because especially it has a Tom Clancy tag over it, so they got Tom Clancy's Desecrated Corpse on the marketing there. So you can see kind of those interpretations, right? You follow?
Yeah, what the hell's happening to that tree?
I don't know what's happening.
It was looking like it was having a seizure.
That's the beauty of Frostbite 2, man. Especially with the anti-aliasing, some things just look whack. I remember one time I was playing a co-op mission with a friend in this game, and we started going down this hallway, and a bunch of AI bodies just started falling. They spawned up like 30 feet, and they just dropped down and then disappeared.
Interesting. So in this, there's a guy up top.
Yeah, I saw him. Oh, he's dead.
So in this game you're describing, is this mostly a dialogue-based game?
No, it's a looter-shooter pseudo-MMORPG, but not really MMO. It's basically kind of statistics-based, build your character with stats and gear, kind of like Destiny.
I'm not sure. Well, you're speaking French to me, but does it? I mean, does it compare at least to Grand Theft Auto in a way that, you're running around, you're doing sorts of things, and your character can talk, you can be asked about X or Y.
I can't really. It's not really like that, I'd hate to say, but there is like an element of exploration that's kind of important to the game. It's kind of a weird point. I guess I'm more or less. I hate to admit, I'm kind of more or less giving you my personal gripes. If I can continue this, if you're willing to hear it.
Oh sure, no, I mean I'm probably not going to buy it, but I'd be interested as someone who lives in Washington.
Oh.
And how they represent Washington, because I remember when Ace Combat 6 came out, I bought that game, and I got to tell you the level of detail they had, even though it was like they could have hired like any 20-year-old American kid to like write the scripts and not make it sound like it was, written by someone who might have English as a third language. But I mean, it was still an amazing game. It was just the stupid like dialogue like hit me as like I'm watching a bad Russian parody,
Yeah, I know the what was it? The Japanese game representing Western country syndrome. Yeah, I know about that. But anyway, with the Division 2, it's supposed to be a one-to-one recreation. Obviously, they changed the names of like various government agencies and such, but the agent is based out of the White House in that game. You got missions in the Capitol building after basically militants took it over. And yeah, that's one part I'm going to do. The entire story of Division 2 basically comes to light that there was a coup attempt by corporations that are backing a private militia to take over the American government in the wake of the pandemic, and they've managed to recruit the former Speaker of the House, now President by succession, into it. And this corresponds with the first game, where in that game, in Midtown Manhattan, mercenaries took over Midtown Manhattan with the aid of an anarcho-capitalist rogue agent.
Jeez, so, not at all related to actual reality.
No influence whatsoever. But I'd like to illustrate this point because sounding like that seems like a real sort of libtard game, right? A real bleeding heart liberal game. John Kerry liberal game. These are kind of obvious points to be picked up on, but a lot of game journalists kind of side against it because of these relatively minor elements. So this is a bit long-winded of an explanation, but I just want to point out that too many people involved with game, when they try to look for themes, and they always stick to... They're influenced by their own personal perceptions, right? The things you don't like or the things you like stick out first, so completely overrides the big hammer message hitting you in the head,
Yeah. It's like a poorly written movie, is what you're saying.
That's in that sense, yeah. I guess the writing as actually one of the critiques of the games. Just, I feel like video games fundamentally, especially like war games or Battlefield 2042 dealing with climate change, they're going to be fundamentally its politics are tied to it, right? It's in the very nature of things. But I think that's no excuse for people to try to not really pay attention or try to pay attention if they're going to try to give an important opinion on it.
Well, it's just like sports. A lot of people in my conservative tribe get their panties in a twist that sports writers are liberal, and you hear people on Fox News saying "shut up and dribble" and stuff like that. But sports have always inherently been tied to politics, and it would make sense that video games be too. You're literally running around in a fairly realistic game, just shooting at people. This isn't like the ACL. The ACLU brings you, the January 6th insurrection, where if you get caught by the Capitol Police, then you have to go through a, very long arrest time period in prison and trial. These games are loosely based with reality, but sports are reality, and video games aren't. And that's one thing that's always sort of struck me about sort of the Gamergate community here, is I understand a lot of the points that they've made in the early days. But it seems to me that the people, we call this in political journalism, we call it being too online.
Touch grass, right?
Yeah, a lot of the people, and you go back to Gamergate on the right and left, are too online, and it's just like, you realize that, like, most people don't care about anime, most people don't care about who's designing the video games, it's video games and politics are very similar in that what people's perception is and what they obsess about online is largely untethered from reality. But they can't admit to themselves this because they don't want to be like, well, maybe if I'm admitting that, this isn't as big of a deal as I'm making it out to be. Could you imagine explaining to your parents Gamergate and imagining that they gave a flying fuck? No, they wouldn't.
Yeah, I know.
Just like my parents wouldn't care if I'm talking about like some obscure Twitter account that I think is a bad person. Like they wouldn't care. I think those are the similarities here. It's inherently political, but also like when you spend a lot of time in front of a screen, as I do in politics and journalism, sometimes you have a misunderstanding of what normal people care about, and I think it's also true of people who play a lot of video games. And I'm one of them now, even though I only play one video game now.
No, that's actually a very good perspective to bring up. Something that I'm not really considering, and a lot of people, or like the two people who watch me, don't really consider is, video games as politics, not in its themes, but as an exercise of thought.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it. And, just like people get wrapped up into their own worlds, like Fortnite, or what's the game that's made out of the blocks?
I don't even know, man.
You know what I'm talking about. It's the game where everything's made out of blocks.
Minecraft. Oh God, that's a mess. My nephew loves that.
Yeah. No, it's the same sort of thing. You get wrapped up in this imaginary world, and sometimes you don't realize things. Like, I would come up, like, during the pandemic, maybe my wife would want to watch a movie some night, and I would be down here in my basement playing, Warzone with my buddies for like 3 hours. And I'd be like, we won 3 times, and my wife's just like, what's winning? And it's just you gotta be careful about that. And that's always been an issue. I'm a lot older than you, but I remember, there was this like thing about people using Yahoo chat rooms to be sexual predators, and then there was To Catch a Predator, where they would, please sit on the couch. They would do all this other kind of stuff. It's just people who spend a lot of time in front of a screen often don't realize that their perception of its importance in the real world is very skewed.
That brings up a point I'd like to ask you about. One of my personal sort of interpretations or conjectures based on what we've seen, how a lot of American, not even the pundit class, but just Americans in general behaving, is I've got the personal theory that a lot of this political wackiness is down to the fact that The standard of a living in America is so stupidly high that people can essentially make asses of themselves, not contribute anything back to society or even their own family, and more or less get away with it because of a buffer of money or resources or lack of food shortages and all that. Would you say that's a
Yeah,
fair way to interpret things?
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Would you say that's
Uh,
something that's exacerbated by the internet, or it's more exacerbated just by the availability of industrialized agriculture and all that kind of stuff?
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, I think about what video games were like when you talked about being a teenager. When I was a teenager, it was GoldenEye, right? Um, you couldn't play people on the internet, Twitch, streaming, I mean, DSL, broadband, none of that stuff existed. It would be like if you really wanted to have like an insane video game night, it would be a sleepover at your buddy's house, and everyone would set things up for a LAN party later on, on Xbox, the first Xbox. I don't even think you could do LANs on N64, but I'm not a technical expert. But hey, quit screen watching, and televisions were small. I mean, like we went out and we played wiffle ball. We'd go out and we'd play dodgeball. We would play hockey. We'd play basketball. We would play games out in the real world, where if did something wrong, it could result in a fight where you got punched in the face. Now, as I read it, like you're never going to meet most of these people you play video games with online, and if you really piss them off, maybe they're going to like fake dox your house, and then a SWAT team is going to come in the middle of the night and kill your dog. You know, like it's changed how we interact with people, and I get a lot of critical response where I work, and one of the things I like to do, and I have a good sense of this because when I worked in U.S. Congress, you talk to thousands of people, either on the phone or via email or via letter and whatnot. And you get a really good sense at reading people. And sometimes when people send really, really nasty notes, I will look up their home phone number and call them like minutes later. And they're like, "How did you find my number?" And it's just like, why did you think you were entitled to any anonymity? Like you sent me an email with your real name and your email address. 5 minutes later, I'm calling you. And, after a couple minutes, I'm usually able to kind of talk them down. They still think I'm a jerk. They still think, I'm a traitor or a socialist or something. But almost all of these calls end well, but people just want to be heard. But when, you're playing a game like you are now, or if you're interacting on Twitter or Twitch or Facebook or Nextdoor or any of these sort of platforms, sometimes you think you can just get away with stuff that you wouldn't be able to get away with in person. And I think that's really the biggest change, is that it's sort of had a dehumanizing effect. Not that you're sitting in a, armored vehicle shooting a, 50 caliber machine gun at pixels, but people's behavior, because they're looking at a screen and they're not looking at the other person, has been modified over the course of time, and in terms of how they treat others. And when you call them up, boy, are they fucking surprised.
You're giving us some real hard-hitting stuff here, and I really appreciate it. This isn't the kind of stuff I think most people my age would even have any grasp of. We got the sort of general stuff, but the real personal anecdotes, that's some valuable stuff there. So I want to ask you another question. Would you say that some of this desensitization, would you say it's a consequence specifically of communication through the internet, or would you say it's sort of influenced by how society has changed? I guess they're kind of one and the same because of the advent of the internet, but what's your interpretation of that?
Yeah, no, it's chicken and egg, right? One example would be when I worked at a print magazine for a number of years, and we used to have a letters to the editor section, and we got rid of it. And the way my editor put it to me at the time was, back in the day, people used to have to type a letter on a typewriter or a computer, print it out, put it in an envelope, fill out the envelope, pay for a stamp, and mail it to us. And those letters required so much more effort that uh, rarely were these letters so stupid. But now that email is free and Twitter is free, people get to do their dear shit for brains sort of stuff. So I think that as the internet has grown, it was like you used to get free AOL CDs with 100 hours of AOL, um, in as like a free trial, that sort of thing. Now the internet is so fast. People are looking at their phones. They have their Apple Watches like they're a veritable Dick Tracy. And between their phones, their iPads, their Apple Watches, and their computers, and even their Amazon and Google devices, they are able to just fire things off. I send out a newsletter. I send out a daily newsletter. I will get like 20 responses within 20 minutes. If I was writing a column in a print magazine, it would take days for that to get to the printer. It would, take days for that to get to them in the mail, and then it would take days for them to respond to me. But now, it's instantaneous. And the volume is so crazy. You know, most people didn't have to worry about the number of emails, or excuse me, the number of pieces of mail that they got. But now, we have something they call it email bankruptcy, where you just have so many unread emails, you're never going to respond to all or read all 1,600 emails. It's fundamentally changed how we are and who we are. So I think it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem, but as the internet has gotten faster, more available, there was a time when I was in college where I would buy when I was in college, I left for college for a semester to work on a political campaign. A 256 megabyte flash drive cost $100, and Wi-Fi was not built into laptops. And we didn't have Wi-Fi in all of our classrooms. In fact, you had to buy adapters for Wi-Fi. Now a homeless person could go into a 7-Eleven and spend $10 on a bare bones Android phone from one of these prepaid phone companies, not pay for any minutes, and then just use free Wi-Fi at Starbucks and live on the internet. It's a fundamental change in how our society is connected compared to when I was in college, when I was a young staffer on the Hill. Smartphones outside of BlackBerries didn't exist. It's just, as society has changed, there's like Murphy's Law about how things get faster. We really haven't, I think, thought about how it changes us societally, and it definitely has.
Would you say some of the issues we're seeing now are just with the internet, or would you say they're more in the lines of growing pains as we get used to this? Or would the development be so quick that growing pains are kind of an irrelevant concept now?
I would say they are irrelevant because, the problem is people. There are people on the left and the right who are concerned about how social media has changed things, whether it's Russian disinformation, whether it's fake advocacy called astroturfing, how echo chambers are created for people to just only follow the kind of news or political punditry that they agree with. But my thought is you really can't legislate any of that away. People have to want to be better. And it's clear to me a large swath of our populace does not want to be better. And they're happy about this. Conservatives say that they've been, that everyone's getting, silenced by Facebook or other big tech. That's a big thing on the right these days. But if you look at what the most popular stories are on Facebook, and you go through the top 25, like 23 of them are, the Daily Wire and Dan Bongino and other sort of far right sites. reality is not comporting with what they think this reality is. And don't get me wrong, when I say people spend too much time in front of a screen, yes, they do, but there still is a reality to that screen, but people don't all see the same cut of this reality unless they take a step back or are willing to look at it critically. Um, you know,
It's no, definitely the problem of our time, right? It's a good way of looking at it. I guess in some sense, what it even is our time with how fast this has changed too.
well, a lot of it is just it's not worth it. I mean, when I was younger, I was stupid enough to believe you could win arguments on the internet, and I would go back and forth with people, you know, to the ends of the earth until I was sure that I had won.
I remember being a 12-year-old.
Yeah, no, I was like 25, but uh, you know, there is no federal Department of Gold stickers for internet victories. And when one of the places I worked went out of business, um, I knew that everyone who didn't like us would be happy that we were all unemployed, and proof that they were right and were wrong. And so what I did is I kind of turned up my filters to limit who I would see on social media. Uh, People who would have unverified, like if you were on Twitter and your screen name was alternative facts and you didn't confirm your phone or your email or any of that kind of stuff, or you didn't have a profile picture or any of that kind of stuff, I'll never see what you say on Twitter, and I don't care, because it's made my experience on Twitter so much better. My wife, when we had our kids, she was just like, "Get off your damn phone," because I was on it all the time. And now when the weekend hits, I'm barely looking at Twitter. And if I'm on Twitter, I'm literally just maybe making jokes about something. And I think we have not grappled with the fact that internet and its related products, be they video games, Twitter, Facebook, they're all various forms of addiction. And no one likes to admit they're addicted, but a lot of people are. And like I say, it's all about whether or not people want to get better, and I think most of them don't.
Yeah, I'll say straight up, I am addicted to screen use, to video games, and all that fun jazz, except for Twitter. I understand the impact it has on me, but I'm playing it right now while I'm talking to probably one of the most interesting people a 21-year-old could ever talk to. So what does that kind of say, right?
Well, that's one of the beautiful things about the internet is it's enabled people to be connected. If you were younger and knew my work and whatnot, you'd have to send me a letter. And I was reading a story the other day about nice.
Yeah, I know. I was surprised, man. I was caught off guard for that one.
I was reading a story about how there was a 10-year-old girl from Michigan who her teacher assigned them a project to write letters to a famous person. Got turned into a movie that didn't work out very well, called The Dictator. But the true story was this 10-year-old girl in Michigan ended up befriending Manuel Noriega.
Oh, wow.
The dictator of Panama. And, they wrote a bunch of stuff, and then Noriega was like, "Why don't you and your family come to Panama?" And that's one of the things I love about Battlefield is stealing dog tags.
I hope they bring it back in 2042. I think they will because of the trailer showing it off.
Yeah, I used to play with one of my wife's former co-workers' husbands, who's like at this point 60 years old. Imagine being in your 20s and playing video games with like a dirty old man, and that was his obsession, was stealing dog tags. And he would do dumb things in the game, like in the Paris maps, just to like the Paris subway map. That was his
Metro,
favorite place.
Operation Metro. Oh man.
Yeah, that was his favorite place to steal dog tags. Yeah, no, I'm not optimistic about things. I mean, my kids are very young and they don't know how to use computers. And the future for young people is whether or not you are good with computers. And if you're not good with computers, you're going to have a really hard time doing literally any profession. Um, and that sort of presents a paradox for parents about the level of access you want your children to have to the internet. Um, I'm not worried about pederasts or all this other stuff because I think it's overblown. You see stories about kidnapping. Most kidnappings are done by people who know the victim. Um, but the internet was very different when I was young. It was different when you were young. And it's going to be very, very different when my children are old enough to play with, various internet connected devices. I'm not looking forward to it. You got probably 10, 15 years before you have to worry about that, unless you make some mistakes down there at Georgia Tech and end up a young dad.
Yeah, I don't believe me, pal. That's definitely not going to be a problem. It's kind of the fundamental things of being at Georgia Tech too. So I got double protection on that front. But
Is Georgia Tech mostly a male school?
that, and you got to work a lot harder than you do at most colleges. So there's no time to do any of that stuff if you can even find the chance.
Yeah, in Missouri we have a technical college. Now it's, I think it used to be called University of Missouri Rolla. Now I think it's called like Missouri A&T. But I remember going to my fraternity's house there. They invited us over for a party and they hoped we brought girls because like it was an 80% male school. Hardworking, bright kids. They turned their basement into a pool. And but yeah, they're you were lucky to meet members of the opposite sex if that was your if you were into members of the opposite sex. But if you were male and gay, it was probably a really good school to go to.
You know, it's always not. One of the things I've always hoped to see more at these sort of technical or higher level schools is greater minority and/or enrollment of women. Being in Atlanta, this is something I actually complained about quite a bit on my other streams. Whenever I have a mutual friend who also goes there show up, I'll just say I wish there were more black people at Tech. I'll say it straight out. It's a great school. I love the people there. All my heart as a college student, but I would love to see greater minority enrollment. They're part of the community here, and from what I've read, there is some apprehension among the black Atlantan community just because they don't feel like they're welcome here, or welcome, at Tech, and I think that's a shame. I hope that changes, because I really think they'd be a great contribution to the community, and I wouldn't say just great, a necessary contribution to the community. One of the things that I've noticed with the Georgia Tech population, probably the same student population of any higher rank school, is that the reality is many of them are from higher, wealthier or privileged backgrounds. And I'm not saying that this diminishes their academic talent or their individual tenacity in any sense, but creates a more insular culture that I think is to the detriment of all there. And it's as I said, it's something I hope to see change, and I got some hope that it will.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the HBCU aspect to things. Obviously, Georgia, specifically Atlanta, has a large black population. I'm not going to pretend to know much about it, but from the little I do know, Howard University here in D.C. is that, it is a point of pride, given our country's discrimination against black folks, and in the South, it gets worse than in the North, where discrimination was still very bad. A lot of people like to think, oh, geez, well, the North were Republicans and they were against slavery.
Yeah.
No, it's not as simple as like a Dinesh D'Souza type would make it appear. There were a lot of issues in the North.
Yeah.
But these HBCUs were created, and generations of people went there in certain families after they were created, and it's no different in my mind than being a white Catholic guy. People are, hey, I'm a third generation Notre Dame grad. Dad went there, Grandpa went there. And there's a lot of pressure among parents. I mean, I know my dad pressured me to go to his alma mater, pressured my sisters too. I didn't. None of us did. But, um, people who like their school have pride in it, and they want to kind of push their kids there. And, there weren't a lot of options for African Americans around the time of the Civil Rights Act until the HBCUs came along, and that has an effect. And then of course the South is the South,
Yeah.
and its politics are very complicated.
That you mentioned up Howard, and now I also, from what I know or I learned relatively recently, there was another school that he was associated with in Appalachia, in eastern Tennessee. I think it was Lincoln Memorial University that was established after the Civil War, specifically, I guess in his words, as a gift to the Unionists who stayed, or at least sided with the Union despite the rest of the state. And obviously it's not exactly a school you'd see on, the U.S. World News and such, but I think
Yeah.
it's probably a healthier thing for all Americans to try to look into going to, maybe not necessarily the highest ranked schools, but trying to pay more attention to the other schools that don't get as much notoriety for a variety of reasons. I think one of the greatest things about this country, quite frankly, is our higher education infrastructure. And there's
Hmm.
and I think with all this emphasis among the sort of, top 10% of socioeconomic Americans who always emphasize, top schools and whatnot, for a lot of people, who can't even get in and can't even afford it if they do, we need to try to put less. I'm not saying we shouldn't put less emphasis, but I am saying that we should reduce the stigma against state schools, public schools, or these lesser known places. Just not only because there's more attendance there, so it's a rising tide carries all, right?
Yeah, I mean, education is education. I mean, I would add to that community colleges.
Mm-hmm.
My mom's father was a professor at a community college. He was the chair of its business school, and she went there for 2 years before going to Ohio State. I have a brother-in-law who went to community college for 2 years before he went to my college, which was a not the most expensive college in St. Louis, but the second most expensive and a prestigious private school. Um, I don't. I mean, you're still there now, but one of the things I found was, as a freshman and a sophomore, you're taking a lot of these core classes, and you're assigned a teacher's assistant, not someone with a PhD, and you're paying an outsized price for probably what is actually an inferior education when these community colleges have full-time professors who are very good at what they do. Um, and there is this perception, unfortunately, where people look down on people who go to community colleges and don't get their education. They didn't go to Harvard for 4 years. Oh
Yeah.
God. Or it's dumb. It reminds me of that scene from Good Will Hunting where, there's the guy who's plagiarizing Gordon Wood, and he goes, well, you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on an education you could have got for $1.50 and over, in late fees at the local library. You know, I'm not sure we're going to be able to easily or quickly change the nature of the American psyche where your degree is a nature of a measure of prestige. But I know I don't look down on folks who came up with inventive and creative ways to get a good education. You should judge someone by how smart they are, how good they are at their job.
But not the piece of paper.
Yeah, I mean, I have my college diploma here in my office, and it's sitting under a animation gel from the movie The Brave Little Toaster. I'm not hanging it up, nor am I hanging up my high school diploma. I am a Kentucky colonel, so I do have my my certificate there.
I was going to bring that up too. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. Please address me as colonel from here on out.
Yeah, no way, man. I was born in. I was actually born in Kentucky. I was born in Owensboro, along the Ohio River.
Okay. Yeah, I know where that is. I worked for a congressman who represented around that area.
Yeah, my family moved to Atlanta because it was less racist.
Yeah, Kentucky is.
It's interesting. It's That's.
Yeah, you know.
I mean, I gotta admit, it was pleasant geography enough for the Ohio River Valley, but it's. Look, I was only 6 when we moved to Atlanta, right? We moved to the suburbs, so it's gonna be more cosmopolitan anywhere. So I wasn't exposed to the worst of it, but Dad tells me stories what it was like having to deal with that, and well, I don't know. I'm just saying, man. I appreciate the change of pace, but at the same time, I do got some nostalgia for the childhood grass fields that I was aware of.
Yeah. Now that you're in Georgia, have you gone to Lidl at all?
Gone to where?
Lidl, the German grocery store.
Little. One opened up quite recently near where I live, but I actually went to the Aldi we go to the Aldi that opened up a few years before that. I
I
personally,
love I love Aldi, but Lidl's way better. You gotta go there.
it has better selection, but I like to pride myself on being having relatively plebeian tastes, right? So, the Aldi brand burritos make for good breakfast and whatnot.
Oh, you can still be a fan of both. I love talking about grocery stores, but um, I mean, Lidl does have more selection, but they still offer the same types of savings.
Yeah, they do.
But I love going there, and their rewards app is fantastic. Um,
You, you're
I don't know
talking.
about I don't know about what Atlanta is like, but in Missouri, where I went to school, you can buy Maker's Mark at a Walgreens.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
You don't have to go to the government store.
the way you're talking about Lidl's the way I would talk about Dollar Tree, to be quite fair.
Oh, I love me some Dollar Tree too. When I was a reporter that traveled, or an editor that traveled, uh, I remember when we were planning convention visits, we'd go to the political conventions, and I would just tell people, I'm like, here's where the Dollar Tree is, and they're like, why are you telling me the Dollar Tree is there? I'm like, because the Dollar Tree literally will have almost everything you need for a reporting trip. Depending on the state, they sell beer, they sell frozen burritos, they sell hot pockets, they sell ramen noodles, they sell
Sell everything you need. All the
they sell
essentials.
like toiletry-sized things, and you're not going to be spending a lot of money to get those. And I would prefer that we keep expenses low rather than you take a cab to a Kroger.
Yeah. At the beginning of every semester, I go to Dollar Tree to pick up my books and paper and all that. It's a great place.
Oh yeah, and between Dollar Tree and Dollar General and Family Dollar, I mean, those places are invaluable. And what's interesting is like their smaller footprint. Whenever I go on vacations, if I forget something, I'm immediately finding one of those three things, and I usually find myself like I didn't pack enough socks, so like I'll go to Dollar Tree and I will buy the Dollar Tree brand socks. And my wife's like, "You're buying socks from a Dollar Tree?" And if I ever won Powerball, that's what I would do with my money. Is I would never re-wear a pair of socks again. It would always be brand new socks.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to ask, we're trying to. What is your favorite fast food restaurant?
White Castle.
Okay, well, I knew that, didn't I? It was a kind of stupid question, but it's a great. So I had the fortune of being able to visit some extended, well, not really extended, but I had the fortune of visiting some relatives in Columbus earlier in the summer, and my father and we got an opportunity to go to White Castle to get a meal there, and we both got the number one with cheese, and in addition to that, I got a birthday cake on a stick, and I have to say, very pleasant experience.
Yeah, it's like it's a family-run restaurant. They don't franchise. They have done some partnerships with people.
Harold
like
and Kumar go to White Castle, right?
Well, I've got a good story about that. I'll tell you in a second. But, the thing about White Castle is, uh, it is such a clarifying restaurant in that everyone either loves it or hates it. There's really no one who's ambivalent about White Castle. And then on top of that, not only do you have to like it, you have to be willing to wait for it because it is a slow restaurant to get food from. But my Harold and Kumar story is the actor Kalpen Modi, or Cal Penn, as you might know him. He took a job in the Obama White House, when I was working on the Hill, and I sent him a note, and I said, you know what, for all these people in Hollywood who, kind of spout off about politics, very few of them know what it's like to be in the trenches. And, I wanted to say, even though I'm, of the different political persuasion than you are, I'm a big fan, and I respect the hell out of your decision to kind of jump in the trenches to make a difference like you want to. And I said, sadly, we don't have any castles out here, but, you know, if one ever were to open, burgers are on me. And he wrote back, and it was a really nice note. Calpin is Indian, and he does not eat beef. So in Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, all of the sliders he ate were meatless.
I think I remember reading that. Yeah. It's
It did not at the time.
I gotta admit, I'm not saying it's a sort of wake-up film, but I think that film kind of perfectly encapsulates so many things that I want. I don't know, I can't really describe it. It was a great emotional impact for me watching that, because there was the Asian identity, obviously is a key element of that, but it was also the promise of the American dream, and, some of the innate value you can get out of eating some really enjoyable, trashy fast food.
Yes. Well, it makes you want to burn this mother down, doesn't it?
Oh,
like
God.
Sweet little burgers.
My great regret right now is I have not seen the film where they escape from Guantanamo Bay, and I really want to find that. But I'm a patient man.
Yeah, if you liked the first one, it's okay, but it's sort of like Major League 3 back to the minors.
Yeah.
It's maybe a movie that shouldn't have been made.
Yeah. No. I heard about it when I was during the pandemic, and I got bored enough that I'll take the interest in it. But okay, we covered stores, we covered fast food. Anything else you want to bring up that really speaks to the more plebeian tastes?
Well, I could talk about my Halo career.
Oh, please do, please do. I've actually advertised to the people on the server about the fact that you're a Halo 2 baller. Please, just spout off whatever you want on that. I won't interrupt.
Oh, sure. No, I mean it's a real simple story. I took a sabbatical from college for a semester to work on George Bush's campaign, and after the election, I had like a month and a half where I didn't have to do anything, and Halo 2 came out right before the election. I remember I pre-ordered it, and then from GameStop. And because I was, such a noob, I bought, like, the book with the strategies. I was one of those people. And after the election, I came back to St. Louis because we had a party at the White House because, President Bush got reelected. And all I did, I grew out my hair. All I did was play Halo 2. And in Halo 1, I had this pothead fraternity brother roommate who was really big into Halo 1. And back then, that was before Xbox had their online gaming system all set up. So you had to, like, connect it to your computer through, a router, and then you had to, like, log into a private server, probably similar to what you're doing now. But for then, that was, like, top-of-the-line computer gaming stuff. And then, if the people got pissed and quit, you'd run back to your computer and you'd type in the chat, like, "Fuck you, we owned you, ha ha ha." Or now they use gamer slang, I'm sure, but
I mean, still the same to an extent.
yeah, but you had to go through more effort to be a dick to someone you just posterized on Halo 1. So Halo 2 comes out, and I was okay at it, but what I was really good at was hiding and destroying vehicles. And so I just decided, just like I did with Battlefield, that I wanted to be a sniper, and that's all I wanted to do, is I would destroy vehicles. And so before the next semester started, I looked at the Halo leaderboards, and I was a little shocked to find that I was one of the top 10 players in the country, or excuse me, in the world, but only in the category of vehicle destruction with those blue sticky grenades.
I mean, top 10 is top 10.
That's literally all I did. I didn't shoot people. I didn't try and dick around. All I did was I knew where my good hiding spots were, and I knew where people tended to use vehicles. and I would just come out and I would just stick that shit to them and I would destroy their cars, or their warthogs. That is all I would fucking do, and it was awesome. It was so awesome. Maybe a little bit boring. Maybe I needed to talk to a medical professional about having obsessive compulsive disorder or something, but like that's how I liked playing the game, and it was a lot of fun. But now that there's a new PS5 and there's a new Xbox, people I play Call of Duty with, they're all switching to Xbox so they can play Halo again. I thought Halo was a very advanced game for its time, but I don't really like space, and I don't really like. I mean, I tend to prefer modern military first-person shooters. That's why I didn't even bother with Battlefield 1, because World War 1 is like, like the reverse of a boner pill. It was just kind of like, you're just gonna make me go to sleep here. I'm not interested in playing. I mean, I own World War 1 era guns, but it's just like, oh, I'm running around with a 4 foot long fucking rifle that has 5 bullets in it. Awesome. It's or I'm gonna fly a biplane and drop a grenade. I mean, like, no, it's just, the concept is not fun for me. Similarly, I don't like the space stuff because it often gets a little too unrealistic, and I just, like, I'm sorry, a gun that shoots pink darts that somehow can track you because they're aliens. No, that's not that. It's you're taking the skill out of that game. It's like, I've invented a nuclear bomb that only kills the bad people. I mean, I could go work at Activision for the amount of bad ideas that are in those games. So that's why I prefer Battlefield and looking forward to the next one. But yeah, no, I played that for a very long time, and then I came out here, and then I got an Xbox 360, and I played Battlefield and Call of Duty. I think Call of Duty has gotten better, but historically, I think Battlefield is a better franchise. But I think the Call of Duty people recognized the things that people liked about Battlefield and eventually adopted them. It wasn't like you'd get a kill streak and then you'd be magically transported into an AC-130 shooting guns. You can fly helicopters, you can drive tanks, you can drive APCs, you can drive motorcycles or quads or all these other sorts of things. But I think where they're really missing is, like I said earlier, having a map that is destructible, because I shouldn't be able to go run in a tin shed to avoid a cluster strike. That would kill you. But there, you're miraculously saved by a quarter of an inch of tin. There's a guy on the bridge up there behind you.
Oh, I won't be surprised. I'm going to see if I can take out the mines, but... Okay, the guy... Yeah, I'm going to listen to you on that one. Oh, wait, I was the wrong class for that one. My mistake. But please...
Hey, did you properly shock the armored personnel carrier there?
I don't think it's going to make a difference. That thing looks like it's on the way to destruction. But yeah, it's I gotta say this as the last Call of Duty game I played was Black Ops 2, and that was just right before I discovered Battlefield 3. And I have to say that I understand the appeal of Call of Duty, especially in its more stagnant days. But I have to admit, I'm really glad that they took the Modern Warfare reboot and tried to do something worthwhile with it. I think this is a great example of the free market in gaming actually working out to the benefits of consumers. Because I guarantee, if Activision or the developers in this cycle had not put all that work into Modern Warfare and Warzone with their innovative business cycle, I don't think Battlefield 2042 was going to be as good of a game as it can be or will end up being.
I hate Treyarch. I think Activision did a better job having played Modern Warfare and having played Call of Duty Cold War. But I will say that it is very interesting to me. I mean, this has always been something that Call of Duty has been known for, is like customizing your gun, and other dumb things. They've done a much better job of it now, but offering Warzone for free, I think was just brilliant. And the pandemic really, I think, helped them. I can't tell you how many people I know. And the older you get, the less likely you are to play video games, unless you've been playing them all along. That, it'll be 1 in the morning, and I'll post a screenshot from PlayStation Share saying, like, "What's up, bitches? One Warzone." And someone's just like, "You play Warzone?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course I do." And they're like, "I play Warzone too." I was just like, "You're 45 years old, and, what are you doing?" It was just like, what else do you think I was doing during the pandemic? So I think the pandemic was actually probably very helpful for video game developers, and you saw all those stories about the chip shortage. And everyone's concerned about inflation now, and not wrongly, but most of the inflation has taken place amongst car makers, and cars require a lot more computer chips than they used to, because they have so many things. I mean, they're not Jeep Willys, but I'm not as worried about inflation as some people are. But certainly the supply chain and how the pandemic affected a wide variety of industries, from technology to even basic things like lumber, has been interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, for my generation, everything that deals with COVID-19 has been kind of our first experience with a sort of world crisis.
Yeah.
You could almost say it's kind of like a rite of passage for any generation, sadly.
I remember the last day I went into my office regularly, and I haven't done that since, and I won't do it anymore. I was at a train station on a military base by my house, and there was a girl who, should have been maybe roughly your age, who went to high school, and rather than going to college, she was working at this coffee shop at a Amtrak VR, regional train station. And the news was on, and so I ordered my coffee, and I was just like, "Were you around when 9/11 happened?" She was like, "Oh, that's the year I was born." I'm like, "Fuck, I'm old." And said to her, I'm like, "You know what? This is going to be like your generation's 9/11. And she's like, "Really? You think so?" And I was like, "Honey, during 9/11, they shut down the stock market. Airplanes didn't fly for fucking weeks. And, a lot of, fundamental societal changes happened during that time. And I would say, obviously in the death toll, this is way worse than 9/11. We've lost over 600,000 of our fellow citizens. But the changes to our society have been far greater under COVID than 9/11. It's just been striking. But like you say, each generation has sort of one of these pivotal things where it fundamentally changes their way of life, and it's something they'll always remember. It's pretty hard to remember a year and a half where you were stuck playing video games or going to school on your computer or shit like that.
Yeah. Now, I got nephews right now who are young, and they are too young to get the shots, and even now it's kind of still worrying some for us because of the variants, breakthrough infections, and just plain unvaccinated people. What if they somehow get it from them, even though we're all vaccinated? Vaccination for those who are taken isn't necessarily the end-all be-all. There's a bunch of other factors that the more self-centered among us are willfully neglecting.
Yeah, my kids still have a nanny, and they're at the point we're about to transition them to daycare, and I don't want to screw my nanny over and be like, "Hey, they're going to daycare now. It's been nice to work with you for 3 years. Good luck finding another job." I want to do right by her and make sure she has another job. So we're trying to transition this in a fair way. We will send them to school more, when like you tell us that like you found a way to replace the income that we've been giving you, and we're all vaccinated except for the kids who obviously are too young, and she's not wrongly concerned about this because like just because you're sending them to daycare doesn't mean you know how other people live their lives, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You don't know how they make their decisions. And with these variants that we know nothing about, I think we're at the Delta variant now. Who knows if this thing could get worse and worse and worse, and mutate in a way that renders our vaccinations useless. And if these kids are spending 3 days a week at a daycare center with 20 other kids whose parents nothing about, like there's also risk in that too. And so that's sort of one of these concerns that you have to have. But people who think, oh, we got the vaccine, it's hot summer, everything's fine. No, it's not fine. Especially in these southern states where
Yeah.
local yokels are not getting the vaccine. I just watched a video of a guy who was at a political conference for conservatives, and he was just like, yeah, I know 3 people who died from coronavirus, but I also know people who died from cancer. And it was just like, do you think that those people didn't want to live? Did they not want chemo? And your argument is like, you're not getting the shot because you know people who died from cancer. It's bizarre.
Yeah, well, I don't know, man. It's one of the, I guess a lot of the pundits point out how just by the nature of isolation, people get desensitized to things. But I feel like we're kind of seeing some of the consequences of a country where it's become profitable to desensitize life. Key point being right here, right?
Yeah, no, and that's sad. I mean, I know a bunch of people who got coronavirus. I actually don't know anyone who died from it personally that I was close with. I'm sure if I went through and did a census of all of my friends and their parents that somebody would have died from it. But how messed up can you be where you personally can tell a reporter, I know 3 people who died from coronavirus, but I also know people who died from cancer. And it was just like, do you think those people were saying no to chemotherapy? Do you think that those people... No, they weren't. They wanted to live. And, I think a large part of it is, do you want to live? And I think that, owning the libs is more important to some people than actually living. Look, I ate Chick-fil-A for breakfast, so it's not like I live a healthy lifestyle. I made myself a Philly cheesesteak for lunch. I am no paragon of healthy living when it comes to eating, but when it comes to basic health decisions, you gotta be fucking kidding me. At what point does owning the libs outweigh your willingness to say, I want to live, and I want to live in a society where everyone else lives? Because if you're pro-life, which these people ostensibly pretend that they are, you should want to do things that are pro-life, and getting this shot is pro-life, I think.
Yeah, it's... I don't know.
Oh, and then you're in college. They
Yeah.
fucking mandate that you guys have to get vaccinations or you can't go to school there. And then now you see these lunatics saying, did you believe that schools are mandating vaccinations? And it's just like, have you never sent a kid to school? Because that's kind of been a thing for 40 fucking years.
Yeah, like I said, people, I guess one of the things kind of related to the earlier point I made is that people have forgotten about infant mortality in this country.
Yeah. Am I allowed to swear on this? Because I realize now I've sworn about 25 times.
Look, man, I've sworn on occasion. You do whatever you want. My goal here is to make sure you got a free platform to get what you think is important across. And I, for one, believe there is immense rhetorical value in swearing. Part of why I try to avoid swearing. But, if it has rhetorical value and you feel it's appropriate, go ahead. I trust your judgment here.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I just realized that might have been something I should have wanted to ask about before we started.
No, it's fine. I mean, I'm not doing this for the money, I'm doing this as a sort of personal project / my own entertainment. And it's good to get people speaking freely, even if some no-no words are the cost to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not using the R word or the N word. I'm just saying fucking shit a lot.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know you're not going to be using slurs. That's kind of, I mean, for the publication you're at, I don't think there's any risk of people there using slurs.
No, unless we're talking about other people using slurs.
Yes, exactly. And you look, I'm pretty sure the people who would be willing to put up with my low production quality and my senseless ramblings, I think they get the nuance of things. So yeah, don't worry about it. It's been really great to have to hear from someone, well, I'm not going to call you old. Might be a bit mean on my part, but you've seen some of the developments in society and the internet and gaming. It's nice to get a different take on things because of that.
I'm sort of like a surfer. Like I've been riding the wave of the internet. I'm just of the perfect age where I was of the age where the internet was a big thing when I was old enough to be proficient enough to use it. You know, I just kind of like it's the same thing as like grade school. I can tell you exactly what grade I was in if you tell me the year, because whatever year it was, if it was 1997, I was in 7th grade. Like it just worked out that way. So, it's just luck and chance of being born when I was to have experienced the internet as I have. But it has been interesting to see it all change, and now that I'm dealing with a dad who's retiring, and my sister had to go to his house and teach him how to use Google Calendar. And it was just like, he's like, well, I use my work calendar at Microsoft. Like, it's the exact same fucking thing, but from Google. But now that you're retired, you need to send us calendar invites so we know about things. I don't know. It's funny. It was the economist I was referring to about people your age have to be good with computers, otherwise they're not going to have any chance at a good career unless they're really good at doing something else, like being a porn star or a cheerleader.
I mean, you need that. You need to be good at computers even for that, man. OnlyFans is a big thing now.
That's true. But I guess, here I'm talking about physical attributes.
Yeah.
Or if you wanted to be a basketball player or something like that. Everything you do in your career, no matter what you do, requires that you be good at computers. And, the economist who said that was Tyler Cowen from George Mason, who wrote about this. And I'd highly recommend to whoever is watching right now, go out and check out his books. He's a very interesting economist, but he's definitely right about this. People your age have no shot at anything as a rewarding career if they're not good at computers.
Yeah. Well, back in the early 1800s, people my age had no shot at anything if they don't know how to use a hoe and till soil. I guess, it's always the tools of the times, right?
I'm glad you clarified about tilling soil, because I know lots of people know how to use hoes.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying I keep things PG-13, but my parents did their best to raise me right, and I appreciate their efforts. Also,
Yeah,
I think
sorry.
no, it's fine. Dude, jokes like that are exactly the thing I need on this channel anyway. I think things have been a bit too low-key as of late. Besides that, I think people in this country forget the fact we're all descended from farmers, so that too.
Well, yeah, in the 1800s, farming represented one of the largest shares of our economy, and now technology has replaced that, and very few people work in farming.
Yeah.
A lot of people said that's a bad thing. I'm not sure it necessarily is. I mean, it's not saying I'm a shill for big agriculture. My dad worked in a slaughterhouse when he was younger than you. But it doesn't mean that the industry itself is fine, but the efficiency of the amount of food we're able to produce, and not even touching on the subject of GMOs, which is saved millions of lives in developing countries, but just the sheer amount of volume of food we're able to produce with very little actual labor required from humans is fantastic. I mean, one good story on this is Tabasco. It's my favorite hot sauces. And my dad did some he's a lawyer. He did some tax work for the company the McElhenney company that produces Tabasco in Avery Island, Louisiana. They produce so much fucking Tabasco sauce that one of the reasons why their sauce is distinctive is because they grow it on land that's on top of a salt dome. But if you think about how available Tabasco is and how cheap it is, you'd think like, geez, is this island the size of, like a small state? No, it's very small. What they do is they plant the seeds and they grow to a small M maturity on this island, and then they have a machine that takes all of the plants out, puts them in little planters, and they put them on an airplane and they fly it to South America, and then they grow them there, and then a similar machine takes those things out, brings those plants, and then a plane flies them back to Louisiana where they go through the process and they get put in an oak barrel with vinegar and other sorts of things, for however many years. But could you imagine the amount of human work that would take if there weren't machines that couldn't do it? You'd be paying like $10 for a 2-ounce jar of Tabasco as opposed to $1.
Yeah.
50.
The one thing I want to point out too with hot sauce discussion is, that's just the production aspect. Or what about distribution and logistics? One hot sauce that's really popular in Atlanta and it's caught on is sriracha, Southeast Asian spice, Vietnamese style. Sold. When I remember when we first moved here, it was sold only in basically the Asian supermarkets, but now it's everywhere. And how did it get here? It was shipped, container ships. If you're paying the money. Planes, that's new technology. That's specialization of labor. Yeah, it's so many things are just possible now. It's kind of amazing. It's near incomprehensible, to be honest, if you want to get the full scale.
Yeah, David Tran, the founder of Hoi Fong Foods, has a really inspiring story. He was a Vietnamese immigrant who came to the U.S., I think by way of Canada, and the name Hoi Fong, the name of his company that makes this stuff in Ontario, California, is named after the ship that brought him to North America. It was called the Huey Fong, but he dropped the E. And the reason why there's a big rooster on it, I know a lot of people call it rooster sauce, is because he was born in the year of the rooster. It's just been, stories like his are, what make America great. We have, these kind of old boy Southerners who made Tabasco, and Tabasco is a great American product. And while Sriracha has its, ties to Asia, this guy wanted to become an American, and he built a huge business here. And you're right. It's I'm not a sriracha hipster, but I knew of it before it became super popular. But I did not know of it when you could only get it at like an H Mart or something.
At least you know H Mart.
Yeah, no, we got a bunch of them around here. But and I love going to stores like that, or we have a lot of Salvadorians in the DC area, and so we have a lot of Hispanic grocery stores that have beers you can't get anywhere else, cheese and other sorts of ingredients you can't get at other stores. And, it's always fun to go and check those places out. They're usually awful places to go for staples. You should be going to Aldi and Lidl for those sorts of things. Otherwise, you're going to be paying like $3.50 for a box of rice-a-roni.
Yeah.
But, you can get turned on to some really cool stuff that, unless you're from that culture or you're an immigrant yourself, you would have had no idea existed. And that's what I like about it.
One of the Yeah. No, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, yeah. No, that was it.
One of the obviously I got a lot of complaints and a lot of critiques of Atlanta itself, exempting even Georgia, but one of the reasons I really love this city is because of the diversity. You know, all the kinds of people you can find here, how close everything is. In some ways, Atlanta kind of exemplifies the best of what America can be in the makeup of its people and their interests. It's I can't really describe the sensation. You know, I can go all over the country and point out like nice areas to live, you know, like Clintonville and all that, but actually really describing the sensation of what you get living in Atlanta, going along Buford Highway to get the Hispanic and Asian stores, or going into Duluth with the higher end Korean joints. It's, I mean, I guess maybe we kind of, I got used to it. I really liked seeing that. You know, it's sort of a reinforcing the values of this country in a sense, seeing it at the best it can be.
I'm trying to remember the name of the Korean. It's like Jollibee or something. It's a fried chicken
I think
chain.
that's a Filipino place, actually. They're starting to
Filipino
expand.
place. Okay, yeah. So Jollibee is coming here to the area, and everyone's really happy about it. But I was reading a story the other day. Oh, it was it was not Jollibee. It was a story I was reading in a Canadian paper and based out of Vancouver, and it was sort of a really interesting sort of globalist take on during the Korean War, Americans brought fried chicken to Korea. You know, like Kentucky Fried Chicken, where you're from, and you know it's you know something that it's not unique to America per se. I mean, lots of other cultures have fried chicken, um, but that style of breaded, pressurized fried chicken, everything. So that, you know, the Korean War brought that American export to Korea, and now you know Korean immigrants are bringing their interesting takes on it back to Canada and the United States. You know, it's basically like it's fried chicken, but we've put a bunch of really interesting kind of flavor profiles that are unique to Korea that, you know, you guys don't have. And these things are just skyrocketing in popularity, and I love it. I mean, I love Peruvian chicken. So, like I said, we have a lot of Salvadorians here in the DC region, and they're known for their pupusas. But the Peruvians are known for their roasted chicken, and you know, you think like the kind of stuff you buy at the grocery store for $5 or Costco or Boston Market or that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's in fact, yeah, there were several Korean fried chicken stores have actually opened up quite within the past few months near the tech campus, and I think even in where I live too. It's kind of amusing. Well, not amusing. I mean, it's kind of living proof of what you're talking about, right? It's one of the things that you can notice in Atlanta is that fast food trends, if they're making big, you see them pop up real fast. I think that kind of speaks to the dynamicism of the city.
Yeah, no, and to the country and sort of our culture. I mean, historically, America's biggest export has been culture.
It still is, I'd say, right?
Yeah. You know, I mean, obviously that gets complicated in dealing with China and other sort of things, but and Russia and censorship. But you know, people know American movie stars. Like Japanese companies will pay Tommy Lee Jones millions of dollars to star in bizarre commercials that if they aired in America, people would be like, "What the fuck is Tommy Lee Jones doing?" You know, shooting lasers out of his eyes, and you know, he's some weird robot. I don't get it. But you know, as my fifth grade civics teacher put on every single test we had, define culture and its way of life, and people tend to like the American way of life. And you know, a lot of other countries in the world send us back remixes of what we export to them, and I think that's pretty beautiful.
I gotta admit, one of the things I'm always big on is diversity and multi-ethnic experiences, and I think with America, it's actually a lot more implicit than we realize. Just obviously a lot of it, European influence both time. It's been more with postal rights. There's great emphasis on black culture, positivity of black culture in this country. We're seeing more Asian culture, especially in Atlanta. It's one of the things I like about the fact of America's cultural dominance is that to these countries that are typically mono-ethnic, very little diversity with their own history, prejudice against other local minority groups, they get through America some experience of what multicultural societies are like, and I think that's to everyone's benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you've seen it in the various waves of immigration we've seen over the course of our history. Um, I would focus specifically on the Vietnamese. And sadly, as we're exiting Afghanistan now, I don't think we're doing right by a lot of the people in Afghanistan who would want to be Americans and who risked life and limb to help us in our 2 decade long military effort there. Um, but you know, I don't know. Do you ever watch the movie Charlie Wilson's War?
No, I don't think I have.
It's a really good book, and I don't mean to be the snob. It's like, oh, you should read the book and the movie, but I read the book before I watched the movie because it's a true story about how we helped the Afghans beat the Russians in Afghanistan. About this obscure Texas congressman, and it's a true story, and it's really interesting. And there was a really cool Afghan restaurant in Alexandria, Virginia, where I used to live. And you'd go in, and there would be a picture of old Charlie Wilson right there on the wall. Um, and I think of where I grew up. Culturally, the people who tended to be barbers were Italian or like Polish or Eastern European, and they'd be like third generation immigrants. They'd be born in America, or they'd be the children of immigrants, right? They themselves were not immigrants. But here in Washington, um, it's been interesting for me when I moved here in 2007 to see that most of the people who are involved in the haircutting industry, at least in Washington, are Vietnamese or Korean, and they're almost all women. Um, it's just, it was not a culture shock for me. I have a pretty basic haircut, Lego man, like Emmett from the Lego Movie. But I was used to a big fat old Italian guy with a mustache regaling me with stories from the old country while I cut my hair, rather than going to a place run by women that are Vietnamese or South Korean. Um, and after the Vietnam War, my thesis in college was on ethno-religiosity and vote choice. And Vietnamese people tend to be overwhelmingly Catholic, especially in America. And the ones that were lucky enough to be able to come to the United States um, tended to be super conservatives. But as time went on, generations changed, and their kids tended to get more and more progressively liberal, which makes sense. You look at what with the stuff that's going on with Cuba now, and people in Florida are like, grab your guns, we're getting on a boat and we're gonna drive around right by Cuba. And it's just like, do you think that's a good idea? I don't know. I don't like Cubans or the communists, but like, seems to me that you're setting your government up for a costly proposition that could send us to war, like the Bay of Pigs. But people who lived in the old country tend to have a very different view when they get to this country. Than their children do, because their children didn't know those sorts of you know challenges and strife that the parents might have. It's very interesting to see how this country does change dynamically. And you died very quickly there.
Honestly, Battlefield. Well, okay, I'm not going to try to make excuses. Okay, that one was okay. You saw that, right? I got
Hey, I wasn't trying to give you shit. I was gonna say this is another thing I like about Battlefield is it's more realistic in how quickly you die.
I mean, it's that or several months in hospital, right? It's one of those two things.
Yeah, no, but like you're playing Call of Duty Warzone, and it's like these guys are running around with a bazooka, 3 armor plates, a pistol, and an M60, and it's just like, what physical human specimen could carry all of those things plus two grenades, a flashbang, and a heartbeat detector?
I mean,
Like nobody could do that. I live in a HOA where everyone is either in the Marines or the Army. I live next to a Marine Corps base, and it's just like no one could run around with a full BDU combat setup, grenade launch or a rocket launcher, an M60, all that kind of shit. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime couldn't do this kind of stuff. So like everything is unrealistic to a degree, but what I like about Battlefield is unlike Call of Duty where you have all of these like things where you can save your life, like oh I'm sorry, you have some random injector thing where you can shoot yourself up with something that will make the pain of the bullets go away. Like I'm sorry, morphine does not, you know, override basic medical physics. You know, if you get shot in the face 3 times and you're down there and you're like, I'm gonna die, you can't take an injection of morphine and be like, I'm fine now.
yeah.
Uh,
In fact,
I like that about I like the realism about Battlefield. That's why I'm more of a Battlefield fan.
one thing I'd actually like to point out is that I think in some ways the sort of restrictions you get with Battlefield actually make the game more fun in the sense that there is a sort of creativity people develop in the face of limitations, right? You can always say shoot a tank with a rocket launcher, but you have people like in this game like to put C4 on jeeps and blow them up that way instead. The
Yes. Oh, I loved doing that on the Battle of Oman. To basically like you'd be just shooting around the map, and then you'd see somebody and you'd jump off, and it was just like beep boop, you're gone. That's a little harder to do in Call of Duty, but I don't know. We should play Call of Duty one of these days because Warzone is actually a very fun game.
I mean,
Uh,
yeah, I played it a few times when I had it installed on my computer. I just never really could get into it. I guess maybe I'm just too inundated to the Battlefield format, but I will say Warzone and Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019, of all the games in that franchise, is the most similar to Battlefield so far. And I always have respect for the developers, taking cues from a formula that works.
yeah, no, I do too, but it's when you are playing a game with two of your friends, and you're playing against 147 other people on a map the size of a city, and the map gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and everyone else is dead but you, that is a different accomplishment. That is a different, sort of endorphin rush than if you get 29 kills, in a multiplayer map like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like it's fun because you're running around. It feels more like active combat. This feels a little bit more like paintball.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually haven't really been able to get into the sort of battle royale style of games. I know it's really popular and all that, but doesn't seem to affect me the same way it does a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I mean it's just my buddies and I. We have our certain strategies, and we have certain places we like to go, and obviously there are cheaters.
Oh yeah, that's a issue, isn't it? I
It's
hear
usually
about that.
it's the computer people like you. Some of us old stick on the consoles, but that even adds to the victory. Like I hadn't played the game in 2 weeks, and then I came back first night. We freaking won, and it was awesome. And we knew we beat some cheaters, some people who were using software that affected their aim, for example, is one of the way people cheat. But it was just so awesome. It was just so darn awesome. And I was like, that's it. I'm logging off. That's my night. That was it. We did it, boys. You just gotta go out on top sometimes. And unlike Battlefield, again, I prefer Battlefield to Call of Duty, but unlike the Battlefield games, what Call of Duty has now given you in a sense of satisfaction is like you can log off knowing I'm the best. I'm the best, or at least in this one random match.
Yeah.
And here, it's like you never get that satisfaction unless you like somehow played a game where you didn't die. But like in Battlefield, if you went 29-0, I'd be like, you're cheating, or you were playing robots, or something else, because like you die in Battlefield very quickly.
Yeah, I don't
It's
know.
just it's the nature of the game.
Yeah, if there's one, Call of Duty is really good about the personal experience. I think, well, that's something that Battlefield tries to work on, but hasn't. I just say it, I don't think the formula works for even attempting that. One thing about first-person shooters, I think more developers need to focus on that they haven't really done so is sort of giving. I'm not saying personalization, but giving personal investment into the character or structure or the narrative of things, right? One of the
Hmm.
things I like to point out with Battlefield is that, or even with Warzone, as you can tell, is that the way that game is, you can more or less create a personal narrative to experience within the confines of a match because of the freedom you're given, which is the main attraction to these things. And that's not exactly something you've gone a lot in the past with first-person shooters, especially from the arena descendant ones like Quake or early Call of Duty.
Well, that, and they also offer you the customization, which used to be really shit. It's like you want your M4 to look like a Cleveland Browns themed tiger. Awesome. But now you can really customize this stuff, and they've gone out of their way to charge money for this to get people to buy Call of Duty points to spend that sort of money. But the other way is the operator. I mean, like, you can't customize any of your weapons really in Battlefield. It's just you're you're running around now with what, the GX1 or
Scar
I don't know,
H. I
Star
mean,
Age. But like I've got a 50 caliber sniper rifle, with racing stripes on it, and I've been able to customize it to lower its what it's what do you call it?
glint, scope glint, right?
You can't mess with the scope glint.
Oh.
That's consistent with modern warfare. That like you get the scope glint, which is weird because you get it through Windows, and I'm like, how does scope glint work through Windows? Like, I'm not an expert on this, but when it comes to when you fire it and your muzzle shoots up, you could deal with the recoil with certain things. You can't really do that in Battlefield. But literally, my operator is Barefoot John McClane from
Die Hard.
from Die Hard, and when I'll signal something or I'll get in a car, he's literally delivering lines from the movie. So they really have adapted and made the game much better in a way than it used to be, and that gets people to get invested in it because like you're spending money on this. Like, you don't even know what your operator looks like. You're running around right now and you're looking at a screen, but like, do you even know what the person that you're running around really looks like? No.
Actually, well, yeah, I guess. Well, actually, I want to point out something. A funny case with Battlefield 3. Earlier on, and I think during the beta and early on the game cycle itself, the American Assault character was a white dude. Later on, they changed him to a black dude, and people complained. Funny thing. Personally, I like the change, but But yeah, I know what you mean. It's very impersonal, right? I mean, older era games, stuff like this, you don't have that investment, or you don't have that experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's like people with Oakley goggles and masks and like shit on their helmet. I'm running around with Barefoot John McClane, who was just like, "Hey, come out to the West Coast, have a few laughs, stay a little while." Like, it's funny. So it'll be interesting to see what the next Battlefield, which I will buy, looks like. But I think they could learn from some of the things that Call of Duty did under the Activision, not the Treyarch regime, because Treyarch's regime was I don't know. I can't play Cold War. I just play Warzone now.
I played the Cold War beta earlier on. In fact, I was actually thinking about getting Cold War for a while. It was, I don't know. I got to level 4 in beta, and then I realized why I didn't play Call of Duty anymore. But, yeah.
I bought my Xbox just to play NHL 20 with my former neighbors. And then one of my buddies was like, "Hey, I play this Call of Duty Warzone game. It's free." So I downloaded it, and then I immediately bought Modern Warfare. And it's smart the way they did it because it encourages you to buy the game, to play the game, to rank up, um, your weapons and everything. It's been a lot of fun and way cheaper than going to bars like I would have done, had there not been a global pandemic.
I'd actually like to point out that you're providing some really good commentary on the consumer experience with Warzone, because in the sort of gaming community itself, I've noticed anecdotally sort of stigma against, free-to-play people who want the cosmetics and skins, and you're kind of more or less refuting that stigma, right? It's really
It's
interesting
not important
perspective.
to everyone, but it's not important to everyone, but when you offer it, I do think it makes sense. I mean, it's like you're telling me I can get a better gun and something that I find hilarious for $20, and that's what I would spend for 2 beers and a tip at a bar
No, I mean,
when I'm not going to bars.
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
of course I'm gonna pay for that. I mean, those guys look exactly the same.
yeah. Except one's in blue, the other
Yeah,
is.
we have John Krasinski in blue, and then John Krasinski in regular, BDU.
Yeah. Well, the wonders of 2011. This was advanced back then.
No, I know. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, but uh, I think customization. Uh, they were on to something at Call of Duty is imperfectly it was as it was, you know, employed back in the day, but now I think they've really mastered it, and I think it would be dumb if Battlefield didn't offer that because it also gives you a sense of investment in this sort of stuff. Like if you know the game is going to exist for more than a year, a couple years, and you're buying, skins for your gun or you're buying skins for your character or stuff like that. Like if you told me Warzone would not exist in 6 months, I probably wouldn't be buying John McClane or any of that kind of stuff because it's putting good money after bad. Um, but I have a sense, and they had the smarts to uh, have their games exist in such a way where even after Treyarch took over from Activision, I still got to keep my bitchin' sniper rifle that I had to unlock, you know, the Rytech AMR. And, that's what I like doing. I just like going and I sit there and I pop somebody's head off from 400 meters, 300 meters, or something like that. And it's a lot of fun. But if I think one problem these gaming companies have run into is that they try and transition between games too quickly, because people get attached to them. And you're way too young for this game, but you probably know of it. Command and Conquer Red Alert.
Oh, my brother is big into Command and Conquer, or he was, but when he had time.
Yeah, I love that game. And we used to play LAN games in my Senate office on weekends with my coworkers. We all installed it on our computers, and now they give it away for free. It's open software. But like that was like the original Halo Wars or Herzog's Wii, which was the Sega Genesis game that I liked.
Or
But
Warcraft 3, Warcraft 2, or even 1.
yeah, no, very similar. But it's just interesting to see how all of this has evolved. Because if you think of the computers when I was a kid, and then now it's just like, oh, I'm not playing a math game at my grandma's house where if I get a math problem right, a monkey climbs up an ASCII tree, and if I get enough of them right, he eats a banana, and that's funny. You know, it's just amazing. But
We're detailing all these advances, and we haven't even touched the realm of mobile phones in gaming.
yeah, I played some mobile phone games when I would play Brick Breaker and BlackBerry when I worked in the government, but Um, when we had our kids, I downloaded a kind of knockoff Mario Kart game that I would play on my Kindle Fire as I was watching my kids. Because when you're a first time parent, when your kids are sleeping, you're worried that they're not going to live through the night, which makes literally no sense, but that's just what makes sense to you. Do you have any other questions for me, or anything else that you think that your users might be interested in hearing story time with me?
Yeah, actually, I have one thing you brought up earlier. Your time as a bouncer. Would you be willing to describe some of that?
Oh, sure. It was funny. I was a prolific underage drinker. Um, I went to my cousin's wedding in Ohio a couple weeks ago, and they had this little thing where they had a Jenga set and they had a Sharpie, and it was one of these like Pinterest things that what's a fun thing to do at your wedding, and it's like write messages and we can play Jenga. So I told my other cousin, the guy who was already married, I said, I wrote your social security number on one of the Jenga pieces. Good luck finding it. And his wife was like, you don't know my husband's social security number, which I repeated to him. And he was like, no. He's like, I gave Jim my ID when I turned 21, and he tried posing as me to drink at bars. And it worked. I was able to make it work. I took out a credit card in my own name, and then I requested a secondary card in the name of my cousin, who shared the same last name as me. Like I got a library card, I got everything. So when I would go and they'd be like, can I see other forms of ID? And it's like, well, what do you want to see? This is my library card, this is my blah, 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 blah. It was probably some degree of identity theft. But it was voluntary. I mean, look, the credit card was tied to me. I was the underlying account, so I wasn't defrauding my cousin, right? But then I turned 21, and the bar I later worked at, I went there on my birthday, and they were like, wait a minute, it's your 21st birthday? They're like, you've been coming here for 2 years. I was like, surprise! And I got banned until I apologized to the owner, who became like a very good personal friend. She later hired me. She and her son, who was my boss, came to my wedding. I mean, we were very close. But it was a 3 a.m. college bar in a city that brews beer, so it was like binge drinking central. So you had to deal with a lot of stuff. I think one of the most interesting stories I dealt with was one night after the St. Louis Cardinals won a game, a bunch of players came to the bar, and one of them parked his car right out front. He somehow got a God spot right in front of the bar, and some drunk fell on his car. And I had to separate Julian Tavares, who was a pitcher who formerly played for the Cleveland Indians and was playing with the Cardinals at the time. I had to stop him and a bunch of other St. Louis Cardinals from threatening to fight some drunk college kid. And I was just like, you don't want this. I'm not your GM. You don't want this. Is there damage to your car? We'll call the police. No? Okay, cool. Then, we'll just get rid of the kids. But times were a little. This was before the Me Too era. This was before social media really existed. Facebook was invented around that time. MySpace existed, but I remember there was one guy. I wasn't working that night, and one of the benefits of working at a bar is when you're not working, you can go there and drink draft beers for free. Most bars operate that way, and some guy put a roofie in a girl's drink and winked at the bartender. And the bartender made a motion to the guy who was working the door, and he looked at me and was like, take over the door, even though I was not dressed like I was working. And they took this guy and they took him downstairs and basically mafia sucker punched him. And then they took him out and then they threw him in the dumpster, which had a lock on top of it, and left him in there until 3 in the morning when we took out all the trash. And yeah, please, in retrospect, the correct thing for them to have done would have been to call the police, preserve this, hold him, and everyone up. But it was street justice. There is a lot of street justice that goes on when you're a bouncer. But I like messing with, this is very hypocritical, but I like messing with the underage drinkers.
Of course you do, right? I mean, that's how it has to work,
Yeah,
right? It's always the hypocritical element that works best.
Well, yeah, look, I've known I was a hypocrite the entire time, but I at least went through a lot of effort to be able to do it. And people would not go through any effort and think that either due to their social status or other things that they could, get away with it. And I remember I took one girl's ID away, and she was like, "Is there anything I can do to get my ID back?" And, you can think of this like a movie. Are you saying anything? And I said, well, yeah. I'm like, you can go back and write me a 500-word essay on why using an ID that doesn't look like you is wrong, and you can't use any four-letter word more than twice. So, she didn't get her ID back. But that's why I was a hypocrite, because if someone didn't put any effort into it. But I also liked asking people political questions.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, cool, you're from Virginia. Who's your governor? Can you name any of your congressmen or United States senators? And then they'd be like, no. I'm like, I just moved there. And it's like, well, it says you've lived here for 3 years. You just moved there? And then I would be like, okay, what's your state's capital? Oh, wait, you didn't realize that Richmond, where you live, is actually your capital? But if they went 0 for 3, I would confiscate their ID. But my favorite question, because people use fake IDs, they memorize things, like everything on the license, right? Name, address, birth date. They used to put social security numbers on IDs. They don't anymore. They'd memorize what their astrological sign is. They'd memorize their zip code and their address. So my favorite thing was, what's your area code? And people were like, well, I don't know. I'm like, how do you call home? Like, you don't know your home phone number? Like, if you needed to call your parents, you wouldn't know how to get them? You wouldn't know how to get them on the line? And that was the sign to me that, like, they weren't putting any effort into it. So, like, for me, it was like, I definitely let people in who were underage, but only if I respected the hustle. And
well, that's not really too hypocritical, to be honest, right?
Yeah, no, but it would be like, what could I justify to the cops?
Yeah, that's true.
I couldn't justify someone who doesn't know any of the answers to these questions. But I remember I went back. My bar since went out of business, not because of coronavirus, and it might be reopening, which I'm very excited about. And there was actually a movie it was written by a regular based on it called One Night at McCool's, which I recommend everyone watch. But I remember I went back, it was like 2012, and one of my old coworkers was still working there, and he was like, "Hey, Swifty, you're from Virginia." I'm like, "Yeah, I live in Virginia now." He's like, "Take a look at this ID and tell me if it's genuine." And it was like getting to relive the old greatest hits. It was a lot of fun, but thankfully, never got a black eye, never ended up in jail. I knew most of the people who went to the bar, and they knew me. It's like almost being a politician in a way, or an elected official, that you have to handle yourself in such a manner where you still have to be able to live your life. So you can't act with impunity. But it's I would say being a bouncer is like being a judge.
Yeah, that's definitely some perspective people in my peers definitely don't get. Yeah, so yeah, I just want to point out to anyone while watching or listening that we definitely have had the best serve in Congress as their staffers, right?
Yeah,
Only the finest people.
Yeah, well, you guys are, I mean, in a post 9/11 era where it is incredibly hard to fake IDs. Um, Technology has changed, but literally when I was a senior in high school, New Jersey was still laminating their IDs like you would go to FedEx Kinko's and run something through a laminating machine. It's
Yeah, it's
bizarre.
it's just something that I guess people my age group, we just I feel like the internet's kind of compounded the experience separation, you know?
Yeah. Well, and it's you know, times have changed after 9/11, and the funny thing was, uh, it was right after 9/11 when I went to do my college visit weekend with one of my high school buddies, and we had made our own fake New Jersey IDs, and they were laughable. And we got to the airport, and my buddy forgot his actual ID. Tried to get on a plane without any photo ID. It's really hard. And he was like, "I'm just going to use my fake ID," and I was like, "Dude, this is literally 2001 we're talking about right now, like right after September 11th. Do you think that like what we printed on your computer with a photo that we took at a Walgreens is going to like pass airport security? I don't think so." So he got checked by security, I think like 5 times. It, you know, they didn't do any cavity searches, but they probably just should have just done one and been done with it.
It's I don't know, man. It's that's some wild stuff, at least to me.
Yeah. Well, hey, Fax, if you, unless there's anything else, I think I'm gonna go out and walk my dog and howl at the moon. But it's really been nice to join you, and appreciate your listeners taking the time to hear story time with me.
No, I gotta admit, it's the same or greater on my end because you've given great perspective, in a delivery tailored towards people of my age group on stuff we just don't really experience and we really have no clue of. And I was thinking that I'd come out here, I'd get you to complain about Cleveland sports and video games, but I've gotten a great civics societal lesson here. I'm pretty sure anyone paying attention has got the same. So this was, now I exceeded expectations. That's all I gotta say.
Well, hopefully it'll be the most listened to episode for Alternative Facts.
Oh, yeah, you gotta beat him out, right? Gotta make sure that's the case.
I don't care. It's when you think about the internet, a lot of it is basically gold mining. Sometimes you will find pyrite, fool's gold. Other times you will just, speaking of that other guy that you're referring to, I remember this person, when we used to work together at a different place, wrote a very good editorial, and I wrote some stupid piece that day, and I got 10 times as many views. And really what would have been better for society was all of those people reading his article and not mine, because mine was stupid and designed to get traffic. And that's, when I began to become a bit of a pessimist about America and its news consumption and involvement of people. We all like munchos. No one wants to eat their broccoli.
Yeah, well, I hope you come away from this experience with at least some sensation of maybe fighting against that just a little bit, you know? Because, no, this was great, it was great to have you on here, and I think this is probably the most, I don't know, productive event I've hosted, the most worthwhile so far. Honestly, the feedback on some of, no, I mean, I don't really know, it's like, no, this is an allegory I used with the other guy, where I basically described this was like some kid who plays basketball for the elementary school meeting LeBron James, you know? That's what it's like for me to talk to any of you guys about stuff dealing with America and society. It's a true masterclass education. I'm glad that we got an opportunity here to share it with the world.
Well, hey, if any of your readers think they can sneak out some college credit hours, I'm happy to sign their letter. You can always refer them to me.
Sure thing, sure thing. Anyway, folks, yeah, I guess both of us got to call it quits, but I hope you came up away from this with some learnings. Again, thank you for showing up. I know it's as a parent and as a journalist, you're definitely not in the easiest time crunch. So I really appreciate the fact you're willing to show up on some dumb idiot college kid's YouTube stream.
Hey, happy to do it.
Well, good night, and be seeing you around.
Yep, talk to you soon.
Alright, folks, and I guess I'll have to end the stream here because I got a lab I need to procrastinate on. So, good night, folks. Thanks for tuning in.